Hello and welcome to the National Debate. I'm Madhavdas G. Viewers, what transpired in China's Tianjin a few days ago seems to have completely rattled the Trump administration and the US President himself. The show of strength of the global South superpowers has put America on notice, and it's clear that the Trump administration is not happy with what happened in Tianjin. The US President has taken to social media to put out a post which reads, and I quote, "Looks like we've lost India and Russia to deepest, darkest China. May they have a long and prosperous future together." Remember now, this statement comes just days after Prime Minister Modi asserted that India's cooperation with China will be beneficial for 2.8 billion people, and it is time for both nations to come together to ensure global stability. Now, what's also interesting to note here is the fact that while Donald Trump has continued to up the ante against India and PM Modi, it appears that people within his own government are not too keen on villainizing India, and this begs the question: has Donald Trump made the battle against India personal now, considering that this is damaging ties with India that was carefully nurtured for close to 3 decades? That's a question we are asking. Quickly want to introduce our guests who are joining us at the moment. We have Ashok Sajanar, former diplomat. Suhail Seth, columnist, is joining us. Andrew K.P. Leung is international and independent China strategist. We have Dr. Michael Owens, who's a mayor of Mableton, as well as president of the U.S. Global Center for Cyber Policy. We have Angie Wong, who's a Miami GOP committee woman. Alex Dunn is a Republican former candidate for the U.S. Senate. Joining us also is Malik Abdul, GOP strategist. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Let's quickly take a look at the first point that we're going to be debating today. And the first issue is, of course, what Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social. He says, "We've lost India and Russia to deepest, darkest China," as I mentioned earlier. He says, "May they have a prosperous future together." And he's also posted this photograph, which has PM Modi, which has Xi Jinping, and which has President Putin in the same photograph from Tianjin. That's the post on social media that you can see. Now, what are the reactions coming in from the other countries to the position that has been taken post the SCO statement that has been coming in? Vladimir Putin has come out to say that can't talk to India and China like that. The colonial era is now over, says Vladimir Putin. Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, says that China isn't intimidated by any bullies. Oppose confrontation and Cold War mentality, says Xi Jinping. Now, those are some of the statements that have been coming in. Let me quickly open this out to our guests, and let me start first and foremost with our guest joining us. We have Alex Dunn. Alex Dunn, let me begin by asking you, what do you make of this sort of a statement? Because this really refers to India and Russia being firmly in the China camp. What you saw at the SCO summit, however, was that India, which happens to be a neighbor of China and which is trying to fix border issues, attended the SCO summit in Tianjin, but was not significantly part of the military parade. Now, that subtle nuance does not seem to have had any effect on President Trump, which has led to this kind of a statement publicly. Your response to that, Alex?
So the hazard of anyone trying to read anyone's social media post is that it's print, it's not spoken. So nuances of grammar and tone can get misinterpreted. That post is clearly sarcastic. It's the kind of thing that you say to an ex-girlfriend who's decided she's going to move on with a new man. Have fun together. Enjoy it. Have a great time. Not going to be as good as me. So I can expand upon what the president said with the tone that I can use because we're seeing both video and audio here. Have fun allied with a brutal communist authoritarian regime. Have fun allied with a country that you have a massive undefended border with. Have fun allying with a country in China that you almost went to war with 7 or 8 years ago and multiple times in the 1960s. Have fun with a country that does not respect the rule of law or the law of the seas or the global rules of the road for commerce. This is a bad bet by India. Making a bed with China will lead long-term to detrimental effects to India. India is a great country.
Cross your mind that breakup or this, bitter ex-girlfriend kind of logic that you might have would be because of your own doing, because of the 50% tariffs, the 25 plus 25 tariffs for buying Russian oil, and the hypocrisy of it when US itself has $2.5 billion of debt, China and EU buy a whole lot more energy from Russia, but it's India which President Trump's regime has chosen to single out with these massive tariffs. So why wouldn't you see some kind of ripple effect of that happening, diplomatically speaking? Alex?
Let me tell you what's hypocritical. What's hypocritical is that worldwide global commentators and the so-called diplomacy experts have criticized Americans and American politics for decades, saying that we don't look far enough into the future or the past, that we're obsessed with the next cycle or the next 4 years. You're ignoring the fact that China and India were almost at war just 7 or 8 years ago. This was Prime Minister Modi's first visit to China since then, and the long arc of the relationship between the U.S. and India bends toward the U.S. and India being allies and not adversaries. I'll also point out that this is a consequence of India's non-aligned foreign policy. The world is changing. The superpower confrontations of the Cold War are over. The world is becoming into a confrontation between the United States and China. And if India is trying to be non-aligned and not pick a side, it may very well end up in the cold or at odds with both sides. I urge Indians and Indian politicians to look at the long view, to not look at a few posts on social media, the ardor, the anger of the past few days or weeks, and look towards cementing a long-term strategic alliance with the United States, which I believe is what President Trump and the American foreign policy apparatus wants.
Suhail said, is it ally-like behavior to slap 50% tariffs on a friend, for starters?
Alex, I loved hearing you. The beauty is that Donald Trump now has intellectual clones. So here's what I suggest, Alex. Have fun with Pakistan. Have fun with Syria. Have fun with Libya. Have fun with an unhinged president. Have fun with the GOP that he has ruined. Have fun with democracy being totally trampled upon. Have fun by deporting people who have valid citizenship rights in America. Have fun with destroying a great nation that America was. You're not making America great again. You're making America wallow in self-pity. Alex, Donald J. Trump is the president of the United States. He's not some Romeo hiding in some school building making stupid comments on Truth Social. In fact, Truth Social in itself is ironic. There is neither truth nor is it socially acceptable or palatable. But let me come to some critical issues. Who messed up this relationship? And let me tell you, Alex, you're a reasonably wise man. It's sad that they didn't allow you to jump in for the Senate. You should have been in the Senate. But here's the reality. America and India were natural allies because we are democracies. When you push your ally away, you suggest only two things, that you are self-serving and you're selfish. Number one. Number two, India has always loved America and vice versa until this president in this term came along. Today, you have strange bedfellows. You're talking about us going to bed with China? We are civilizational legacies, China and India. In fact, I'm going to gift you a book on the commonalities between China and India. You know who's the strange bedfellow in all these relationships? America. Who holds the maximum American debt? China. They've got you in more ways and in more positions than even the Kama Sutra recommends. So don't give us one of these angelic philosophical lectures. You're the last people to lecture. You remember, you went in the dark of the night to kill bin Laden because you didn't trust Pakistan. And it's the same Pakistan despot whose field marshal you invited for lunch to the White House. So spare us these angelic lectures because you have no moral right. You have no moral right. You have no intellectual right. You have no historical perspective. And what's worse is that lies don't make up for the truth. So here's what I suggest, Alex. Given you have a voice and you've been invited to this panel amongst all of us, I would suggest you tell Donald J. Trump the following. Number one, make America great again, but don't make America wallow in self-pity. Number two, make America trust its allies. You know, the world isn't about bargaining for a jet plane. That was a song. You're running a country. Number three, there is more to America and great Americans than just Trump Incorporated. You know, you're talking about morality and morals. I mean, for God's sake, you're telling the land of Mahatma Gandhi about the morals of a man who is always distracting from the tenor of the matter. Why should India respond?
Absolutely.
Has Narendra Modi ever issued a statement from June, Alex, till now?
Forget Narendra Modi. Actually, the fact is that no one from the current administration in India has actually used this kind of rhetoric. So, you're absolutely right. I want to get in a quick response from Alex before I go across to others. Alex, your response to that, the hypocrisy and, of course, the double standards that the US itself has vis-a-vis Pakistan, all of that Sohail has said, your response to that?
Well, it's the first time anyone's ever called me an intellectual, and I'd really prefer, if you'd like to send me a copy of the Kama Sutra, you're more than welcome to. I'd love to read it. I haven't yet. I think that when you're talking about the strange bedfellows and the civilizational legacies, the United States is a 250-year-old country. We can't help it that we haven't been around for thousands and thousands of years. We live in the political and geopolitical moment of the right here and the right now. Yes, India and the United States of America are democracies. They're great democracies. The odd one out in that relationship is the brutal communist authoritarian nation of China, and you cannot trust the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, there were a couple of lunches and a couple of mean posts. Suck it up.
We trusted Trump, he let us down.
This is real stuff.
We trusted Trump, Alex. We trusted Donald J. Trump. He let us down. So let us trust China. A, B, you keep ranting about China. What did Donald J. Trump say yesterday in the Oval Office? Oh, that I have a great relationship with President Xi. He has a great relationship with everyone. The problem is that relationship is either in his mind or on social media. I'm saying
absolutely, and he was actually engaging with President Putin in Alaska a short while earlier. But if someone else engages, it's a problem. When you do business buying uranium and plutonium from Russia, what right do you have to tell other countries what they'll do? Countries will buy oil from where it's cheap and where it's effective for their economy. They have a job to do. Alex.
Our economy to run, Alex.
Alex, and in fact, US asked India to buy that oil about 3 years ago, if you remember correctly. Alex.
Well, I remember that Joe Biden asked, and nobody put a gun to India's head to tell them to buy that oil. They chose to buy that oil. There's a new president. His name is Donald J. Trump.
Suhail, one by one, please. One by one. Suhail, you can come in. Let him respond, and I'll come back to you. Alex, please. One by one. Gentlemen, let's go one by one, please.
President is unfortunate. Joe Biden,
I can just wrap up and say there are two indispensable.
One by one. Let's keep it civil, gentlemen. Please, let's keep it civil. Suhail, I understand you're agitated, but let Alex complete his point. I'm coming right back to you. Let Alex finish, and then I come back to you. Alex.
My final point is there are two indispensable economies in the world: the United States and China. If you want to be in that position, make the economy of India indispensable. It is not yet. And by the way, Russia's economy is not indispensable either. The United States and China, those are the two largest powers in the world. Pick a side, choose wisely. Pick the United States.
So well said.
No, I would love that, Alex. But you pick your friends. Don't pick fair weather friends. And I totally agree with you, Alex. We will survive because we're a civilizational legacy. We are a country that believes in the right. We are not a country that plays politics and that changes its affections based on the mood that Donald Trump is in or the card of his golf game, which reflects his atrociousness. We're not that country.
Okay. Let's please hold on. There are other panelists as well. I have to go across to others. Let me go across to Malik Abdul. Malik Abdul, you know what's becoming increasingly clear, and I want to refer to a certain Washington Post report which suggests that there was a U.S. team comprising of Secretary of State Rubio as well as U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer who went to resolve the standoff with President Trump, and they spoke about a deal with much lower tariffs from India's side. But guess what? President Trump rejected that deal, saying that it's only going to happen when India stops buying oil from Russia. So it's quite clear that it's all about personal egos now more than anything else. Malik.
But if what you're saying is true when it comes to Russian oil, then that doesn't sound like personal ego. That actually sounds like a strategic move that Donald Trump is making.
But wasn't it tariffs that got us here in the first place? Is all I'm asking.
Well, you're going to have to let me respond first. If India is not alone here. Donald Trump has made these type of tariff threats, whether it is Canada, Mexico, even the European Union, the EU for that matter. India is not new to this. India is not alone. I know it may feel like that, but it's simply not. You can disagree with the negotiating tactics that Donald Trump is using. Donald Trump has used this actually successfully when it comes to other countries. He hasn't just done this with India. Of course, the Russian oil is not just an issue for the United States of America. Russia has been sanctioned hand over foot over and over again over the past years, not just on the issue of oil, but a lot of their things that they're having their actual economy. So again, this isn't new. Personally, as someone who voted for Donald Trump 3 different times now, I don't have a problem with Donald Trump using tariffs as a negotiating tactic. Yes, he's been critical of the relationship that India now seems to be building closer to Russia, but also China as well. And I agree with my colleague in the fact that China and India are the two great, China and the United States are the 2 top greatest superpowers in the world. We have to work with each other in the same way.
Diplomacy has to be a two-way street. There has to be give and take. It can't be my way or the highway. And leave aside the hypocrisy of EU and China buying far more energy from Russia and US itself, engaging with trade with Russia. Why has Russian oil not been sanctioned for that case? Why has that not happened? Well, if you feel so strongly about it.
Well, it's India and Russia. There have been a lot of criticism from inside of the United States about the fact that the United States has not decoupled itself when it comes to relying on Russia for anything. That was the criticism under George W. Bush. It was the criticism under Barack Obama. It was the criticism under Trump 1.0, Joe Biden, and now again with Donald Trump. So it's not as if Donald Trump is doing something different than other presidents have done when it came to Russia. Russia has always been, this has always been the position, and the same with China as well. But we do have to continue to work with China, much like we have to, unfortunately, still get some of our imports in when it comes to Russia. The same goes with India. I believe that there is probably about maybe close to $100 or so billion trading relationship that the United States has with India, and it is a very important relationship that we have had over the years and has continued to foster over the years. What I suspect that will happen, is that at some point, and hopefully I would actually say soon, that the administration, Donald Trump himself, would actually revisit what they expect from India when it comes to the tariff negotiations. I know that there is a lot of concern about the fact that India having open trading relationships, even on the issue of agriculture. That is something else that Donald Trump is talking about.
Just as Trump wants to protect his farmers, the Indian government wants to protect our farmers, which are close to half our population. And that's a basic lack of understanding or even a historical perspective that Sohail was talking about earlier. That's quite clearly reflected in the administration. But the hypocrisy, I want to bring in Ashok Sajanar, is on the point that it's okay if the US engages with Pakistan, which we have problems with, but it's a big problem if India engages with Russia, which the US has problem with. That blatant hypocrisy is what makes all of this and this entire episode completely stand out.
No, absolutely. You're very right, Madhav. Thank you for having me on the show. You're right. When the United States, not only it has, problems with Russia, but now it is trying to cozy up to Russia. You can't forget the images from Alaska when Donald Trump is standing, waiting for Putin to come. And he's the one who has rehabilitated Putin, who was seen to be a pariah player on the global scene. He's the one. And can you forget the images when the American Marines are trying to smoothen the red carpet for Mr. Putin to walk upon? Meaning, how is he having problems with Russia? Putin tells him, after you came in, Mr. President, our trade has increased by 20%. How in 4 months? How is he having problem with Russia? So, it is basically because of his peak at the fact that Pakistan has nominated him for Nobel. India has, although there were suggestions made to India has not done that. India has not acknowledged, that the United States had any role whatsoever to play as far as the ceasefire between India and Pakistan is concerned. So this is his personal ego getting hurt, getting offended, that he is taking all this action. Madhav, if you permit, just to respond to the earlier debate that you were having, what was said by some of the panelists, that these two are the major powers. You have to choose. This is a binary that you are presenting to me. I do not accept that binary. I have chosen myself. India has chosen itself that its interests are supreme, not your interest in the United States, not the interest of China. I will engage with the United States where it meets my interest, and I acknowledge that there are a huge range of interests. We have more than 60 dialogue platforms on which we are talking, we are collaborating, whether it is technology, whether it is energy, whether it is trade, with a huge number of them.
Yes.
And with China, we have only the problems in terms of our border, their support to Pakistan, the trade. But it is a very, you said it's a major power. We have a 3,500 kilometer long border.
Right.
It is unsettled. Do you want me to be, if I am in the American camp, do you want me to be at enemies with China? No, you are not enemies with China. Mr. Trump keeps on having loading encomiums of praise on Mr. Xi Jinping. He also is very great friends with Mr. Kim Jong-un. He told Xi Jinping, please convey my regards to Kim Jong-un and to Putin.
Right.
You are in bed with those people. How do you expect? I have my security. I have my economic interest. And I will see where they are best served.
Yes.
I agree.
I want Alex to respond to that.
And
Alex, another set of hypocrisy is being exposed here by the previous speaker. Mr. Ashok Sajanar has been a diplomat, and he's actually putting out what is India's context. For instance, there's this bizarre logic that one fine day India is going to walk out of bed and suddenly buy all American military equipment. Now, first of all, it's very expensive. It's not going to happen overnight. And from the last 20 years, we have increased our purchase and share of American military equipment. But that's a gradual process. You can't expect us to throw half our military equipment, which is from Russia, into the sea just because President Trump wakes up one day and wants us to do that. It's not practical.
India should buy some F-35s and then we can talk. I think the reason that India is moving away from Russian military equipment is that Russian military equipment sucks. It doesn't work as well as American military equipment. American military equipment sets the standard the world over. Yes, during the Cold War, and this is a legacy. What is coming now is a result of what has come before. This is the legacy of the Cold War, where India was more closely aligned with the Soviet Union and bought a lot of Soviet and Russian military materiel, military equipment. But things have changed.
Well, the recent India-Pak conflict, for starters, Alex, actually proved which equipment was more effective and which wasn't. And I think Suhail said, would you like to refresh Alex's memory?
I will just say one thing, Alex. We are not shoppers in the American supermarket. Okay? If your entire political ideology and relationship is transactional, ours is relational. Get that reality right. We are not a nation which bargains in supermarkets or MAGA stores saying, oh, we will buy your F-35s, be nice to us. You want to be nice to us because we are a nice democracy. Make that the platform. Don't make it transactional. You know what the tragedy, Alex, and what Ashok said is so true? Why should we give up our sovereignty? Why? Why should we give up our sovereignty? Why should we give in to a bully? Why should we give in to an unhinged president? Why should we destroy years of relationships between America and India? Today, some of the finest CEOs are of Indian origin. India is proud of them. America is proud of them. I love America. As an Indian, I love America. And what I detest is how the American dream is being choked at the altar of avarice, greed, and personal gain. We will not submit to a bully, no matter who that bully is, because remember, he will only be there for another 3.5 years, unless he even screws up the Constitution of the United States.
Well, we don't know what will happen in that context. Of course, a lot of allegations. But let me bring in some of the other guests also on the panel. All right, Alex wants to quickly respond to. Quick response, please, Alex.
I just want to quickly respond. The great thing about Donald Trump is that he says in public what's normally said in private. Do you think these negotiations, the way the tenor, the way that they've gone, are not expressed in private? They are, and they would. The Barack Obama administration essentially bullied the United Kingdom, our closest ally on the planet, one of them, and one of our longest allies on the planet, to increasing its defense spending and played hardball. This is hardball in plain sight, not hardball behind closed doors.
All right. Does that logic really work? Andrew K.P. Leung as well as Dr. Michael Owens haven't yet spoken. Dr. Michael Owens, you agree with that kind of a premise that the Obama administration bullied one of the closest allies? I mean, they're not quite allies then, is it? If you're bullying and if it's a one-sided relationship.
Or in diplomacy, each country is bound to use its strength to pursue its own national interests. But apart from that, I think that all this discussion, underlies the great misunderstanding of what the world is all about, because the Cold War kind of mentality no longer works. I mean, this is in the past. I mean, there's not just one country or another, and you choose one and side with another, that kind of thing. But let's face it, China, India, there are lots of differences. The differences as high as the Himalaya. I mean, the border disputes are unlikely to be resolved anytime soon. And I don't think that India would give up the court for that matter. India wants to be friends with the United States. China wants to be friends with the United States. I mean, that's why there are so many Chinese students in the United States now being welcomed by Trump. So I think that there is this kind of mindset is very poisonous. You either love a country, you hate another country. You either sort of trade with another country, or you impose tariffs on another country. That's nonsense. So I think that what President Xi and China is trying to do is to highlight this multipolar kind of a world paradigm where countries can work together in spite of differences. Not because they don't have differences, not because they don't have differences in ideology or trade, but they can work together and promote a more rule-based system. That's the rule-based system America has founded since the Second World War.
Absolutely.
And then America is the greatest defender. But that system has been totally discarded. Throw into the dustbin. And that's what's happening. So India, China, Russia are pushed together. They're not pulled together because there are lots of differences. They're pushed together by President Trump's unilateralism, coercion.
Let me bring in some of the other panelists as well, please. Dr. Michael Owens, I'd like you to come in on this because there's a sense here in India that one of the reasons that this is dragged on for so long and is playing out so publicly is because of India's refusal to acknowledge that President Trump is the one who diffused the war or the recent conflict between India and Pakistan. India's stated policy for decades has been that there will be no third-party mediation. And it is, of course, when Pakistan's DGMO called our Director General of Military Operations that the war finally ended. There's a lack of history and historical perspective in that kind of nuanced approach, which we are seeing from this particular administration, which is costing and hurting this relationship. Do you agree with that premise, Dr. Owens?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I absolutely do agree with that because the simple premise is this. The historical context does not matter to President Trump, right? Nor does it matter to the administration. It is clear that it is about here and now, what's going on right now, and how he wants to continue to push the American first agenda. Now, let me be clear. I want to be really clear with this, because I've heard a lot throughout this. I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran. I served 8 years in the Marine Corps. And one thing that I know is that you have to treat your allies as friends, and you have to treat your adversaries as foes. And that is just a clear blanket truth that we have to understand. We also have to make sure that because it seems to be lost on this current administration, it's not lost on the country of America as a whole. We understand the problems and in many times the hypocrisy that's kind of going on with this. As a mayor of a city, I also have the responsibility to connect what goes on with foreign policy decisions and how they affect every average, everyday citizens throughout this country. We have to understand that, this America-Indian relationship must endure. It has to continue to define where we go forward. We know we're two of the world's largest democracies, and we are allies, and that has to be protected. The idea that Trump can play bully ball and say, I can play with this country, but you can't, or I can do this and you can't, is something that's very, very problematic on many ends. Unfortunately, Trump has chosen this stance of diplomacy through chaos, right? And it does matter what's going on, how's he feeling. And it's unfortunate that the idea even comes to where we have to pick winners and losers here. You either have to be on our side or you have to be on their side. This world is too interconnected today. The global economy, the $129 billion that the U.S. and India has together has changed the dynamic on how this world works. The idea that we're still playing this Cold War atmosphere is something that we just cannot do. Technology, the global need for how we all move forward with AI and what's going on around cyber has brought us closer than we ever have been before. And Trump fails to acknowledge that and understand that. And, we saw this in Trump 1.0. We are seeing it now in its highest form because now it's emboldened in Trump 2.0. I just want to make sure the world as a whole understands that this is not an American policy. This is Trump policy. And it's something that we're going to continue to work towards because we do understand that even with these concessions that's been put out there and been ignored, because Trump wants to ensure that he is the loudest voice in every room. Okay. Collaboration is the key here, and how we're going to move forward is making sure that we build on trust and we make sure adversaries stay at bay.
पैसा लगाना है तो सेंचुरी क्लब प्राइम पे लगाओ, डूबेगा नहीं, जलेगा भी नहीं, कोई खा नहीं जाएगा, धोखा नहीं देगा, ऊपर नीचे भी नहीं होगा, सेफ रहेगा, सिक्योर्ड, मिनिमम 30 साल का रिटर्न देगा. अब इससे बेटर इन्वेस्टमेंट है तो बताओ.
Something that's severely lacking in the current approach. And certainly you can't deal with countries, whether it's India or China or Russia, which have a very, very different way of doing things. It's about the relationship, as one of our previous panelists, Suhail Seth, said. And that's what clearly seems to be lacking in the current rhetoric that we are seeing.
Yeah, I don't mind if Modi wants to be India first. He should be. He's the leader of the country. Then you shouldn't also mind that Donald Trump is going to go for America first. And if our foreign policies clash in that way, this is not about respect. It's about getting what each country needs and wants to do going forward. This is not about bullying. I don't want to spend time on bullying and emotions and any of that stuff. This is about moving the world forward in the right direction. This is about ending world wars. That's what President Trump wants. You can call him Orange Man bad all day long. Doesn't hurt my feelings at all. But you want respect from him? You're going to have to give him something. What he wants is for India to stop buying Russian oil. He's made that very clear with the latest deal with Secretary Rubio as well as Jamieson Greer. That deal was completely taken off the table because the Russian oil buys were still there. Now, if you want to talk about respect, maybe you have to give him a little something. Now, I also understand that Modi wants to buy the cheapest oil you possibly can to keep the country running. That is respectful on my side. I understand that, but it's not going to go towards Trump's agenda. So I think that's where the moot point starts. Maybe that's where the
unless US is willing to sell that volume of oil at that price, I don't think there's any constructive solution there. And let me ask you, is calling India a dead economy and clubbing it with Russia, or even talking about the Russia-Ukraine war, as Peter Navarro says, is Modi's war, are those respectful comments, really?
Listen, I hear it all day long because he calls a lot of people that here in my country, here in the U.S. We don't take it personally.
But that's your problem, man. Why should we sitting in India hear it? That's your problem. That's your domestic politics.
Again, this is not about emotions. This is not about bullying words. If that's how you feel, then you can't negotiate. I think President Trump understands that right now, he holds a lot of cards, right? You brought up the EU buying Russian oil before. Guess what? The EU just gave the U.S. $1 billion for energy sources. So, people are making deals with President Trump and America.
Sure, they're getting bullied.
Deals.
They're getting bullied if you choose to call it that. But yes, many hands going up. I'm going to go one by one. Ashok Sajanar first and then coming to the rest of you. Mr. Sajanar, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, no, I wanted to say so many things, but, I had to be very quick. It is not a matter, as this lady is saying, as the others are saying, it's not a matter of respect. It's also a matter of trust. The trust is a very fragile element, and the trust has been built slowly and gradually over the last 25 years. What Mr. Trump has done is in 2 months, he has destroyed that trust. And, as far as it's not only between people, it's also between countries. You can't work together. So you want to be friends, if you want to work together, if you want to collaborate. Now, it is the same Mr. Trump who had on the 1st of January 2018 said that Pakistan has taken $33 billion from us in fighting terrorism, and it is giving safe havens to the same terrorists that we want. What has happened to that? It is his personal family business that has made him change his no. If you are talking about your media, please read your media. That's what they say, this global financial reality or whatever, this cryptocurrency, and he wants to go in for, and it's his family who is going. It's not the country. So, I think there are so many of these issues, that are there with, as far as Mr. Trump is concerned. You say India should stop buying oil from Russia. What about China? Why don't you pressurize China? Why don't you impose sanctions on China? Why don't you impose sanctions on Russia? You have not put sanctions on Russia at all.
We have a lot of sanctions on Russia. In fact,
not on the oil, ma'am. Not on the oil.
Russia whatsoever.
No, there are no sanctions. What Mr. Trump
there are no sanctions on Russia?
This thing should stop in 10 days. Otherwise,
on purchase of Russian oil.
It's going to be hell for Russia to face. But, he has not put anything additional. He shows the greatest of respect. Now, what has Russia given to him? He wanted a ceasefire. He wanted a peace deal from Russia. Has Russia given him that? No, but he doesn't use these bullying words that Mr. Navarro, we are a civilizational state. India is a civilizational state.
Okay.
India will not stoop to that level.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to quickly look at some of the other points that we are debating today. I'm going to request you all to just hold on for 2 minutes. Let me quickly recap some of the other statements that we've seen, which have made this entire controversy a bigger one. Now, this is some of the points that many are talking about as to why Trump is singling out India. One, that India didn't credit Trump for stopping the India-Pak conflict. Reason two, India didn't back Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize, unlike what Pakistan's done. The third reason is that India has cited national interest when it comes to Russian oil purchases. Reason number four, right, this is something else that we are seeing in terms of statements. Now, this is the latest coming in. Howard Lutnick, the U.S. Commerce Secretary, has spoken to a news agency and said that in 2 months, India will be on the table and say sorry. That's the statement of the U.S. Commerce Secretary. It will be on Trump's desk and how he will deal with Modi. So again, it's not a conciliatory statement, but it is in fact one of the statements that's going to further aggravate the issue. What is being stated by Peter Navarro, another person whose statements have caused a lot of consternation here in India. India is a Maharaja of tariffs, for instance. The Brahmins are profiteering is another statement he's made. Profiteering at expense of Indians. We also seen what Charlie Kirk, an activist, conservative activist, has said, that America doesn't need more visas for Indians. No other immigrants have been displaced or have displaced Americans as much when it comes to jobs. What about Americans themselves, and what are they talking about in terms of their response to this current diplomatic standoff? Tariffs have pushed India closer to Russia and China, is what Dick Durbin, U.S. Senator, said. He's also said that they are weakening our position around the globe. We're also seeing a statement coming in from Representative Gregory Meeks, U.S. lawmaker, who says that arbitrary tariffs threaten this vital relationship. Ro Khanna, congressman, says Trump destroying 30 years of work to rebuild U.S. and India's ties. And then we have Jake Sullivan, former U.S. NSA, who says that Trump risks undoing years of work to bring India and U.S. together. John Bolt, another former U.S. NSA, said that Trump has shredded decades of effort with disastrous tariffs. Let me quickly take this across to Alex. Alex, I want you to come in on this because it's Jake Sullivan, no less, who's coming out to say that it is because of the kind of crypto deals that Pakistan is doing with the Trump family that they've managed to get such a good deal, and that's something that has irked President Trump. Is there any truth in that allegation? Because the crypto deals are out there in the public domain.
Oh, good. Joe Biden's national security advisor, who propped up a decrepit president, lied about it, knew about it, basically ran the country unelected, is opining about right and wrong. Spare me. Jake Sullivan doesn't know what he's talking about. I think the larger point here that some of us are getting lost in is that an alliance between two nations, just like an alliance between two people, doesn't mean that you never, ever argue. The United States and India are having a bit of a squabble right now. It happens. It's normal. It happens between the best of friends. But I remain hopeful. whether it's through these tactics or other tactics, carrot or stick, good cop Marco Rubio and President Trump playing the bad cop, whichever way this goes, I do believe that in the end, the United States and India will have a far-reaching, beneficial trade deal that is good for both nations and both peoples, and will move in to a prosperous shared future together, because the arc of history is bending that way. It doesn't bend in perfect curves. It gets bent out of shape a little bit. But I believe the United States and India are destined to be great allies and partners in prosperous future.
Well, Indians certainly hope that that is true. But the point is that, diplomacy works when you keep all of this argument behind the scenes, and playing out publicly the manner in which it does certainly does not inspire any confidence. So, Sohail, you want to respond to that? And is it a fact that these crypto deals could have perhaps done it as far as US and Pakistan is concerned, and have impacted the India relationship, as some observers in US seem to be suggesting?
See, with the greatest of respect, I'm no one to comment on Trump's desire for overarching greed, whether it is the arc of history or the arc of commerce. That's his problem. My worry is when you have unintelligent people at the top of the totem pole, there are problems. And I want to tell the lady panelist, it's not that we love Trump less, but we love our sovereignty and our independence more. We will not be bullied or cowed down into admitting to something. And when you replace diplomacy with the word deals, which you kept mentioning in your opening remarks, I worry. Because there's a difference between diplomacy and deals. Trump's entire life has been built on transaction, not on relations. We are a civilization that believes in relations. You may disagree with us, and you have every right. Number one. Number two, it is no one's case here, as Alex rightly said, that America and India shouldn't be friends. But it takes, to quote from Hollywood, two to tango. You can't ask us to be the blind person leading you to a waltz. So here's my request. Try and drill some sense into someone who hasn't read, because I just want to end with quoting Shakespeare. You know, when in Shakespeare, Julius Caesar, he says, when you told Caesar he couldn't be flattered, he was most flattered. That's Trump for you. He wants the Nobel Prize. He will get the Nobel Prize, but he'll have IG before it, the Ig Nobel Prize. Because we are not in the shopping business to give people prizes. Pakistan will promise you the Nobel. They can't even spell the goddamn word. So here's my request, Alex, through very intelligent, sensible people like you. India is not interested in a dogfight. We're interested in rebuilding the relationship which existed with respect, with substance, and in solidarity.
All right.
We aren't going to bed with anyone against anyone. We are not that nation. We aren't that people. We don't want an issue with America. But that doesn't mean that America will walk all over us and we'll be supplicants. That process and that era has passed. It ended in 1947, and it isn't going to return now, Alex. No matter what bullying you do, no matter what silly tweets an unhinged president sends out, that boat has sailed. So come to terms with a new India, which is confident, but not arrogant, unlike someone we've been talking about.
Okay.
And talk about a new India which knows its onions.
Okay. Okay. Andrew Leung, just coming to you, but since many of those questions were addressed to Alex and Angie, quick comments from them. Alex first and then Angie.
I would simply also have a quote, because I think America doesn't have founding documents or doesn't have legends and stories that are as old as India and Chinese culture, but we still have some pretty good ones. And one of our greatest presidents, Abraham Lincoln, said, though passion may have strained, let us listen to the better angels of our nature. And I remain hopeful that's going to happen. These are a few posts. These are a few lunches with leaders. These are not things that are going to stick in the grand arc of history. They are not going to be remembered. I also think that this misapprehension that the United States is moving closer to Pakistan is completely misguided. The United States derives great benefit from a long-term productive alliance with India and far less benefit from an alliance with Pakistan, which President Trump rightly noted during his first term we were burned with because the Pakistanis let us down in the war on terror. I think America and India are destined to be great together.
All right. Andrew K. Leung.
Time is running out, so I just make two quick points. The arc of history is changing, but not in a direction as my dear panelist was trying to portray. The arc of history is moving to the global south. I mean, if you add the global south economies together, it's bigger than the G7. I mean, the arc of history is moving in that direction, not because of they are, forming a bloc against the United States, as I said. The arc of history is moving towards not a unipolar kind of one country, dictates everything. It's a more inclusive kind of world. And that's what is being portrayed, in the SCO summit. I mean, there's the rhetoric about you either with me or against me. This is totally out of date.
You want to respond to that very quickly, Angie Wong? You're ignoring the global tectonic shifts that are taking
shaking
place,
my head
especially
because
as far as economies are concerned. Yeah, your response.
No, I mean, I think some of the math is wrong there. You speak about diplomacy and relationships, and guess what? Diplomacy and relationships over the past several decades has put a big deficit on the U.S. and American taxpayers like myself. I think American taxpayers are done paying for the world's checks. I don't mind that Trump is doing trade deals. In fact, in the last 200 and so days since he's taken his second term, he has renegotiated trade deals around the world with multiple countries. I am very thankful for that. My children are very thankful for that because we don't have to take care of other people's bills. So I don't mind calling them deals versus relationships. We can deal with relationships later when you want to deal with relationships with us. But right now, this is not going to be a two-way street. It doesn't sound that way. And President Trump has the right to remove himself and say, no, we're not going to do a deal. We're not going to do this Rubio deal because it's not going to work for America first, and we do not want to pick up your check anymore.
That's where people, even in the United States, have a problem. So that's why I want Dr. Michael Owens to come in on this. Dr. Michael Owens, we'll do the deals first and we can care about relationships later. Is that really how diplomacy works?
That's not how diplomacy works. I think, American taxpayers want what all families want. They want a safer world, strong relationships that keep our country safe and prosperous. And, when you look at the narratives that are out there, I talk with people on the ground on Main Street and Front Street every single day. They do keep an eye on what's going on from an international policy perspective, but it's about, does it protect jobs? Does it increase jobs? Does it have more of an impact on what we're doing? What they see right now is what most would call a basic tariff war because Trump is mad at India for some reason. Therefore, he lays out this enormous tariff. What American folks want to see is a president that is guided by a strong sense of, yes, we want to make sure our American citizens are safe. We want to make sure that America is a prosperous land. But you know how we've done that over generations now? By partnering, working with countries, by being able to import some of the best and brightest people from around the world to come here to learn, to work, to explore, to innovate. We want to make sure that we keep that as well. And that is one of my biggest concerns is that the rhetoric that has out there that continues to alienate us because of this failed deal making will hurt us in this long run of this arc that we're talking about. I have no doubt that America and India will persist through this rough patch or whatever you want to call it, because I think as the world, as I said before, the world's two biggest democracies, we must do that. So yes, this is a blip because I believe that future administrations will find better ways to understand that as we're in this global interconnected world that we're in now, peace and prosperity is what's going to rule the day.
Well, I'm sure everyone on the panel agrees with me when we say we all hope that whatever diplomatic relationships are there with different countries all survive this turbulent weather. But I want Malik Abdul to come in on that because that's a very real fear. Malik Abdul, as we've seen in the case of India-US, it is a very, very slippery slope and things can quickly spiral out of control unless there is a calibrated attempt to ensure that things don't go out of hand. Because while we see certain kind of conciliatory statements coming out from the Secretary of State, you again have, the Treasury Secretary, etc., who making all sorts of bizarre comments. And that's where things can get dangerous. Malik Abdul.
Yeah, this is exactly why I said initially in my opening remarks that what we're seeing with India isn't something different than what Donald Trump has done, whether it's Mexico, whether it's Canada, or even China for that matter. Donald Trump threatened additional tariffs on China that was almost about 75% on tariffs on China. They got back to the negotiating table and we're getting back to a great space. The same is going to happen with India eventually. If India wants to hold over the United States of America, the idea that the Trump family is benefiting for some type of deal when it comes to Pakistan, then that's on India. It has nothing to do with the United States or
anything to do with India?
Well, this is what I've heard. This is what you've said, and this is what your panelists have focused on, talking about what Jake Sullivan has said, that most of us here in the United States, knowing what he did when Joe Biden was in office, is not concerned about. Donald Trump wants to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. He's made overtures to Russia that actually has been in the face of people here who've been criticizing him.
All right.
Donald
It's
Trump
been widely reported even in the United States media, Malik Abdul, but we'll have to leave it there. I'd like to thank you, Malik Abdul, Alex Dan, Angie Wong, Dr. Michael Owens, Andrew K.P. Leung, Suhail Seth, and Ashok Sajanar for joining us on this edition of the National Debate.